Giants, it's 8th Deadly Sin coming at you with another EU Week 1, Day 1 analysis of Champion Select. This game is the game between H2K versus Giants. It's going to be a pretty good one. This Champ Select is pretty interesting. Let's get into bans right away. So the first ban coming out is going to be Morgana. Morgana as a first ban is going to be pretty interesting because it seems really out of place considering all the high level tier 1 pretty much insta bans that we've been seeing throughout the other regions and the LCS so far up to this match, especially with them being like Poppy, Lissandra, Gangplank, Rise, other priority picks that seem to come out of here. But we need to remember H2K, while they are being hyped up as this super team, has a lot of experienced players. So I'm pretty sure all of these players know how to play against the tier 1 meta picks, really know how to operate and play around these picks, as well as having just some strategies to deal with those tier 1 meta picks. So any, potential pick that could either tilt certain players or, really dismember any inherent, flaws or weaknesses in team comps that they want to play, you need to get rid of them. So it seems like they banned the Morgana more as a protection against a pocket pick or something that they really don't want to play against. And that's pretty safe considering the skill of the members of H2K. So let's move on to the second ban. Second ban coming out from Giants is going to be Lulu. Again, classic meta pick, very strong with the short time of this game. Thunderlords makes her extremely viable in the mid lane, can deal massive amounts of damage as well as buff up a single member of the team, making her the linchpin or the cornerstone to many protect the Kog'Maw comps, protect the Tristana comps, and pretty much eliminates that off the board, especially if Giants doesn't want to play it. And first pick being H2K, since they're on the blue side, really makes it almost a necessary ban for Giants. The next ban is going to be Poppy. Again, as I said, things that could potentially tilt players. We all know as good as Forgiven is, he probably would get tilted if he couldn't be able to dodge out of the Poppy CC with her blocking all the dashes incoming and outgoing around her in that radius. Also just very strong as a support or flex pick to the top lane, allowing to get a lot of CC, a lot of disengage, and also the engage potential of her utility is also there, as well as just the inherent tankiness and damage that she has in her kit, making it a pretty good ban coming out from H2K. The next ban is going to be Gangplank. Again, I was talking about tier 1 meta bans that are almost necessary. Oh, it's seen that red side is pretty much guaranteed to at least ban 2 top tier top tier champions per any cycle, per any game that I've seen so far, just through the fact of like Gangplank necessitates a first pick lock in, and so does Lulu. Gangplank obviously having a huge amount of area of effect damage, just a huge amount of damage in general with the barrels and his passive, as well as his ult, which gives him a nice global presence to be able to assist any dives and or engages even if he is not in that lane, and the wave clear that he offers, a good ban coming out from Giants. The last ban coming out from H2K is Lissandra. Again, talking about top tier picks. Lissandra has been proven to be one of the best flex picks of the season so far, being able to do huge amounts of AoE magic damage, also being able to have huge amounts of CC and slow, as well as the point click engage of her ult, being able to create zones of pressure around the map, as well as be able to just kind of fracture any team K and be able to blow up certain squishies with that ultimate, making easy targets and easy pickings for the rest of their team. A very classic pick coming out. So I mean very classic ban. Now, getting into the last ban, it's Kindred. Again, it seems like Giants has banned out all the classic tier 1 meta picks that they don't want to give up to H2K. All of their bans so far have been very strong laners, but nothing really tailored to H2K and necessarily preventing any team comps or, favorites that would have been of those members. So a bit, lacking on that side, but then again, all of these bans are things that you should not be willing to give up, especially when you're on red side. The Kindred having that pause of an ult, being able to set up a lot of things, as well as just a lot of damage, especially scaling with that passive ability to constantly get more AD, and the utility of the ult insane, necessitating the ban from Giants. So now getting into the pick phase for H2K. The first pick coming out is going to be Trundle. Now, Trundle is just an insane pick, very much necessitates a first pick in my mind. It's still very strong even with the nerfs coming in from 6.1. Essentially what those do is it means an increased mana cost on the pillar, which means he has to be a bit smarter with that placement and zone control, as well as the longer cooldown on his ult, which really doesn't matter in the long run because you're not going to be ulting every 60 seconds as Trundle anyway. So I think that the stat steal that he gets, as well as the tankiness and damage that he can output, as well as combined with the choke points that he can set up, as well as that zone control he can set up with the pillar for both engages and guaranteeing poke to hit, but also other factors as disengaging team fights and fracturing the enemy team, and also trying to, both engage and disengage as a tool of that pillar, makes it a very strong pick. I'm glad H2K picked it up. And again, it's a flex pick, so it has the ability to both go top, jungle, and support. Jungle probably wouldn't be coming out, but top and support I think are probably the most viable positions that H2K could flex that if they wanted to. But see, now it's the first pick. Let's get into the second draft phase. The second drafting phase coming out is going to be Rise for Giants coming out, which is a very good ban. Again, one of those tier 1s that probably would have taken the place of Morgana for a little less experienced team than H2K, in my opinion. Again, Rise being a huge late game threat, has the ability to scale up and do massive amount of AoE damage, magic damage to be precise, as well as the ability to safely lane, to be able to have that, as well as the CC of the point and click and rune prison, and all those other factors that make Rise such a great pick. It can be flexed to mid or top, but we've been seeing a lot more mid Rise than we've necessarily been seeing top Rise. Still that flex capability coming out from Giants. Again, the thing that I'm about impish a bit with the Giants draft of Rise is that Rise is a very fickle champion in the sense that you need to be able to execute on a specific strategy to get that Rise to the late game, or have the ability to utilize Rise at his less evolved state in the early to mid game. So I think if you fail in the early to mid game, Rise pretty much becomes a non-factor if H2K can roll over that Rise through the early and mid game, not allowing him to reach his full potential and beast state that it is at the late game. The next pick coming out is going to be the Rek'Sai for the jungle. That's a pretty standard tier 1 pick. Rek'Sai just provides nice vision, especially coming out with her passive, with the vision changes from the preseason, and the less amount of green wards are going to be coming out. The tankiness that Rek'Sai offers, as well as the AoE area, damage with the Q when he's unburrowed, as well as the area of effect knockup of the unburrow, and the potential to flash unburrow from a tunnel, giving him a lot of ability to gank from the fog of war. That is more crucial with the ward changes, as well as just mobility and general mobility around the jungle and around the map, especially with her ulti. Just a very safe jungle pick to be picking up right away. The next drafting phase coming from H2K is going to be picking up Graves and Corki. Now, Graves could be flexed to ADC or jungle, but I would pretty much, and I would think anyone would assume that Graves is probably going jungle. H2K, we have bringing up Corki. Corki can be flexed for ADC or mid lane, but I think for what we're seeing and how Rio likes to play mid lane, as well as the fact that Graves has already been drafted, I think it's most likely going to be Forgiven's Corki going to be picked up here. And Corki, as I stated, an insane, probably one of the best ADC so far on patch 6.1, because Misfortune has been nerfed and pretty much made unusable, meaning that Corki's mobility with the package, as well as damage and movement speed that he gains with the package, means that he's able to set up a lot of kills. These professional teams are really going to have to realize whenever you're playing against a Corki and you hear that package noise of it being deployed, everyone should get in a pretty much turtle position, because you should almost always get a kill every time you pick up the package. I have no doubt that Forgiven is as mechanically gifted as he is probably ready to use the package, seeing really good packages that provide such a long distance of gap close and engage, especially seeing how there is going to be less vision, as I already explained, giving him many more angles and avenues to utilize that package throughout all lanes to be able to provide almost a global pressure with that ability, as well as just the pure magic damage burst and poke that Corki has. And seeing how he is mixed damage, it provides a little bit more slaying ability depending on how they itemize on Giant's side. Also, Graves jungle, very strong, very armor shredding potential coming out from the Graves. You can see that with his abilities, with his Q, he has excellent jungle clear time, making him a viable jungler, and like I said, already with the armor shred, getting items such as the Ghost Blade and Select Cleaver, and then getting, other items to increase that inherent armor shred that he has, as well as getting some cooldown reduction to allowing him to spam. And coupled with the Trundle, I think they synergize very well because Trundle's going to be stealing away those stats, only further amplifying the damage of Graves, who's going to be able to armor shred through the less amount of armor that they're inherently going to have on their team. Also, I think this coincides very well with Jankos's playstyle. He likes to get down and dirty. He likes to get kills. He likes to be a very play-based player in the sense that he wants to make those plays, wants to have an impact, a direct impact on the game. So we can see that. So I think Graves is a real perfect choice for Jankos here. Now, kind of analyzing what other jungle picks that they could have picked up. Probably could have picked up an Elise, but I don't think it doesn't synergize as well with the Trundle, as I've already stated. That synergy is very strong. I think very effective. I don't think Elise would have provided that tank shred, especially since they're going up against Ryze and Rek'Sai right now, which are already probably going to be some of the tankiest members on their team. So I think Graves is the perfect choice for the jungle. Also, picking the jungle as soon as their jungle pick has been exposed allows you to isolate the picks that you're going to be picking in the 5th drafting phase, which is going to be H2K's final one, allowing them to save their mid lane and still have the flexibility with the Trundle, Corki, and Graves to kind of leave if they're going to be choosing a support, if they're going to be choosing top lane, what they're going to be doing with this. And I think it provides a very nice kind of meshing to how, this team comp's going to play out for H2K. Let's move on to the 4th drafting phase, which is going to be Giant's 2nd draft. We're going to be picking up the Giant bot lane of Lucian and Braum. Now, if I had to rank the top 2 AD carries of 6.1 right now, it would be Corki and Lucian. Lucian just has insane amount of poke with his Q. Essence Reaver allows him to be constantly using his abilities. Thunderlords, again, with any champion, is just going to increase that burst damage. Lucian has insane wave clear, obviously, with his Q and the culling, and just insane damage in general with the culling and his Q, allowing him to pretty much try to lane bully the Corki, but also be effective in a lane swap situation, being able to farm up nice, being able to push in those waves, get that turret damage. Now, the Braum I really like here, because what other support are you going to really pick for Giants coming out? You could pick up the Alistar, but looking at the team so far of H2K, Alistar is not going to be too great because he's going to get his stats stolen by a Trundle anyways, so that really doesn't matter. But also, Thresh provides a bit of a disengage, but doesn't really provide too much engage utility that you have. You really don't have too much engage besides Rek'Sai right now and a running in Ryze. And I think like Braum provides a lot more versatility in the sense that he can block a lot of the damage coming out of H2K. He can block that damage coming in by Graves. He can block that poke coming in from Corki, and also just provides greater zone control with Braum, which is pretty much what Giants is aiming for here, is a very zone-based team comp, especially with the Ryze and the Rek'Sai and the Lucian, who can do insane amount of pinpoint damage with the culling, with the piercing light in a single linear direction. I think the Braum is perfect. I feel like he can set up a lot of the poke. Also, the Braum Q and the passive stacking synergizes very well with Lucian. It's a very good, strong bot lane position to bully, even if it is Trundle, even if it is Corki. I think that they're in such a position that they will be able to bully, or at least attempt to bully Forgiven and Vander in that bot lane, almost setting them up for success, as well as having a nice transition into the team fight with that zone control, as well as the CC that they can get from the passive and the ult. Moving on to the 5th pick phase, it's going to be H2K's last pick phase. They're going to be picking up Ari for Ryu in the mid lane, as well as Shen, which eventually goes to Odoamne. Now, Shen is, I think, another pretty solid choice because it just provides another frontline component that they're lacking, since they're not going to be getting a tank from the jungle since he's going Graves, but also provides a nice engage tool in the sense that you can ult the Ari, and Ari can ult into whoever they're going to be picking, and as soon as Odoamne gets there with the Shen from the ult, he's going to be in such a position that he's almost going to be guaranteed a taunt at any target that they get. So as soon as Odoamne and Rio hit 6, Giants is going to have to be really on the defensive with that, specific two two champion engage tool that they have, as well as just the Shen ult coming out from anybody, protecting the Corki, protecting the Graves, protecting the Ahri from any situation, just providing a lot of protection and a lot of also the engage that I've already talked about, as well as just the pure tankiness that it has and the ability that it can split push a bit, especially with the TP. It can split push and push down those lanes, probably going to be picking up some form of a Sunfire item and being able to, slowly push in those waves and do a decent amount of auto attack damage. And if we're assuming that Ryze is still a flex pick, Shen going into Ryze isn't the best matchup because it is melee v range, but if we were pretty much making the assumption that Ryze goes mid, Shen is a pretty safe blind pick for the top lane, which is what Giants has been saving their last pick for. And I think the Ahri, very good into Ryze. If you've watched my previous video on the Elements game, I explain how Ryze is needs that time to ramp up unless you very much are a master of Ryze mechanically, as well as Ryze a unique positioning that you need to have in the early game, being such slow to ramp up, being longer to get your full rotation of spells off, and the longer those cooldowns are, just from the pure fact that it's in the early game to early mid game phase of the match, meaning that Ahri has a lot of pick potential in the sense that she can charm some of the members of the Giants and possibly get an assassination. She does an insane amount of burst, has an insane amount of mobility, so she can get out of scenarios where she's going to be hit by the Braum or going to be, tunnel engaged on from Rek'Sai coming out from the Fog of War, also being able to dodge rune prisons or being able to quickly get away from a situation so she isn't perma-stunned, but also the ability in lane to pressure the Ryze, because all Ryze wants to do is essentially ramp up, and Ahri eliminates that phase by putting immense amount of kill pressure on the Ryze, making him farm under turret, probably getting kills in lane would be the main job of Ryu against this Ryze, shut him down early, and pretty much eliminates any late game threat that Giants has, but excluding Lucian, who can easily be picked off and eliminated by other members of their team. Now going into the last pick of this game, it's going to be Kennen for Adam in the top lane. Now, while this might seem like a weird pick, I think that it's actually fairly decent for what Giants is trying to do with their team comp. So the Kennen, as everyone probably knows if you've played against Kennen or even know the basic abilities of the champion, is that it is range based. It has the micro stun that it has, stacking the passive, as well as the great amount of stun that it can have with his ult. And his ult just pretty much provides a huge zone of stun and AoE and magic damage coming out from Kennen, as well as a large amount of mobility, meaning that any gank from the Graves is probably not going to happen when it's a Kennen v Shen lane, as well as the range factor on Shen allows him to bully Shen and probably have an in-lane advantage, as well as not being able to get ganked on because he has that escape with the Lightning Rush, and probably also really good to gank for Kennen because he has the ability to stun Shen in lane and gap close quickly with that ability that I just described. But I think this is Giants' team comp. They have created a very zone-focused team comp, a very much a control team comp. And I say control in the sense that you can have zone team comps in two ways. You can have an engage zoning, which pretty much wants to force the enemy team into fighting while creating zones of pressure where they know they can deal massive amounts of damage or win, or more of a control zone comp in the sense that they have zones of pressure that all of their champions can admit. You have the zone of pressure by Ryze, you have the zoning through Rek'Sai and the mobility, you have the zone from the Braum ults and the slows there, you have the zone of the culling as well as the piercing light in that linear direction, and the zone of the Kennen ult, meaning that they're pretty much trying to create essentially a control comp, allowing them to control the tempo and pace of the game. Whenever it gets to sieging or team fighting, they're trying to make it so there's really no areas in which they can engage on, in which H2K can engage upon them, as well as them giving them enough disengage options that they can get from those team fights, essentially allowing the Ryze to get to that late game and to carry them through the late game. So it's a good setup around the Ryze while also giving them some decent mid-game damage and zone control if they execute it correctly, as well as macro game options with, Ryze farming solo lanes while still having enough zone and CC to be able to sustain 2-2 lanes, or a 3 and another 1 with Kennen split pushing on the side. So I think they get enough versatility with this team, but it's a very defensive team comp, whereas I get to H2K's team comp a lot more engage focused. So this team doesn't really have the zoning factors that I described by Giants. Sure, you have the pillar of Ice being a zoning tool coming out of the Trundle, which is going towards Vander, and you have some AoE zone that you can create with the Corki, as well as the pretty much just the Corki, but it's very much engage and team fight based because they have the Trundle who's going to be stealing all the tanky stats away from this Rise, away from Rek'Sai, depending on the position they're in. You're going to have the armor shredding ability of the Graves jungle, who's just going to be doing massive amounts of damage if he's allowed to get on a target, as well as the inherent setup ability with taking away stats with Trundle, as well as setting up terrain that Graves can execute a fast Q on to get massive amounts of damage out. Also, you have Corki who's doing massive amounts of poke and has the ability with the package to create situations where they're going to engage on, going to be looking for those, team fights to take as well as picks that they can get with this. You have the assassin burst of Ari, meaning that they have pick potential and catching people out when they're transitioning from lane to lane or doing any type of team rotations, while also just doing a massive amount of damage but having a high amount of mobility. And then you have the Shen coming out to kind of provide that extra protection for when they do go in with his ulti, as well as just the engage factor of Shen, where they can put the Shen ulti on, say, a Corki as he Valkyrie or packages into a team, and he can put the ulti onto Arya as she ults into a team, setting up many taunt angles that he can reach. And I think it just has a very much better engage comp. If I had to give an advantage to either teams purely based off of drafts and the players, I have not watched the VOD yet, so I do not know who wins this game. I do not know how they execute these team comps, but I would have to give the slight edge to H2K, not only because I believe most of the players are probably better in the 1v1 matchups, but I think the inherent defensive nature of Giants is already pretty much meaning that Giants is hedging their bets on just surviving and controlling the game to the point that they can get to late game and have the Rise run out of control, whereas H2K is really aiming for a lot of team fight, a lot of engage, without necessarily losing that late game damage battle as well. So I would give slight advantage to H2K. Now, remember, guys, to rate, comment, and subscribe. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. Provide your own analysis. Whatever you want to do, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.